one thing you're really good at. Clickbait.
Classic Karen move, right?
I like that. You know, what's interesting is there's a guy by the name of Andrew Tate.
He is the perfect example of someone who had the stuff, had the vision, and knew what he wanted to do after it.
You're so humble too. I love how every time it comes to talk about how great you are, you deflect.
No ego. Like I listen, you know, before I walk on stage, I always remind myself of certain things like, oh, Taylor Swift slipped on stage. I'm gonna enjoy that for a second.
So you've been inspired by the idea of Sherlock Holmes. What is it about that inspired you?
Like just the amount of heroin he was taking.
You just gotta start with like a controversial question of something. By the way, we're live, right? All right, cool. But with you, dude, I was just fascinated by something in particular. So that with you, one thing you're really good at, right? You perform at the highest levels, and there's a book called Maximum Entertainment by Ken. One of the things on that is how to tell a good story. So what is the thing on how you tell good stories, and how can someone create good stories? I suck at storytelling, so I'm curious on that.
Yeah, I mean, what worries me, first of all, is that I thought you only had one page of notes there. Then I saw you bend the page up, and I'm like, oh no, this full notepad is dedicated to...
Oh, this isn't about you. This is just...
Yeah, I know. I feel like I'm being interrogated on it. Exactly. A good story. I think only in recent years have I learned how to be... I think I've always been I've learned to become a competent speaker. But I think in the last few months, if you'd asked me this a year ago, I wouldn't have had a good answer. But I think the real secret to good storytelling is to make people feel something. I think if you don't get people to feel, and I don't just mean that it needs to be a funny story, but if you don't make people feel like sorrow, maybe even grief, or resonate with you in some way to become empathetic to what it is you're saying, it's never really going to fully impact them. And I really fully believe now the best
way to tell a story is to really be giving and open, so that when you are sharing, the authenticity is really, it's just subconsciously like it's true to its core. And as a result, people will really resonate with what it is you're saying, because you are hitting them in a way that words, you know, don't just do it. You're transcending the words, and you are then really impacting people.
Because part of entertainment is you're taking your audience through a journey throughout the show, right? And so are you using storytelling as a way to describe plots and showcase tricks and actually perform your act?
Yeah, I think there's two different ways that I do or use the storytelling or use effective communication, and that is in the ensemble magic shows that I've been a part of touring the world, even here in Vegas when I'm narrating, you know, the life story of Shin Lim. It's very much, the way I look at it is clickbait type structure. In that, you know, like one of the presentations, I would say, you know, the lights would come up and I would say, in less than 60 seconds, you will find out whether or not you are currently sitting beside a psychopath. And right away, people are like, what does that mean? You know, it's like, oh, I'm in, because they want to know like more about that. So there's the clickbait way of writing where you throw these things out and people are hooked and you draw them in. And that's really going at the audience, or there's getting the audience to come to you. And that is slowing down, showing that you're present, comfortable, calm. And as a result, it helps them relax. And then they'll buy into you. And ultimately, when they've bought into you and your comfort level, they will then buy into what it is you're actually saying.
You know what's interesting about that is when I look at social media, right? That's kind of like my world that we live in. One thing I've realized to be true is that you do have to be clickbaity, right? And so like you were on to this clickbaity idea of people's attention span. You know, they did a study on the average internet user's attention span is 3 seconds, right? A goldfish has a longer attention span than that.
Yeah.
So, but you're using that strategy when it comes to your performance and knowing that the audience is gone if you don't have them, right?
Yeah, I think the world, society has been manipulating itself into that mindset for the last 10, 15 years, right? So I think just being cognizant of that, and just understanding people can be on their phone, on their laptop, clicking, you know, and just going next. So you want this stuff to be coming at them. It's certainly when they don't perhaps know who you are, or they haven't paid specifically to see you, you want to work at the way that their mind, you know, present at the way that their mind works. And that's why I think in those environments specifically, that's why I have purposefully structured my content to be that for them, you know, so that it's with love. It's like brainless thinking, right? It's just like throwing stuff at them that I know is going to hit, and then when it's got that hook in them, then I can dive deeper.
Interesting. Yeah. So you mentioned people not necessarily coming for you, right? And you've toured as part of acts that you weren't the person, right? That's a group where people are coming to see an act. I think it's similar in business too. Like when we look at it, someone's jumping on. They're not jumping on like let's say a sales call, for example. They're not jumping on to talk to me. They're looking to get a solution to the problem.
Yeah.
So what's the thought process on that? It's like, how do we take someone who's kind of here, maybe they don't even know why they're here, and transcend them to like, liking you, respecting you, and ultimately buying from you?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few levels there. One is I really hope that I have no ego, or over the years I've learned to rid myself of that need for attention, applause, standing ovation, the center of attention. Like as a kid, I never craved that. Then I think I maybe for a while arrogantly did want that, and then got it, and I'm like, oh, is that it? Like it's just like, oh, what a waste of time and energy, So I think ridding yourself of ego or that need and that desire to have that from people allows you to then just be there, be real, be present. And before I walk on stage, I always remind myself of certain things, and that is, number one, maybe only half the audience want to be there. The other half have been dragged along, at least, or more potentially. But I'm also aware of the fact that some people have spent what they would consider to be a lot of money to be there. And I get that. Ticket prices sometimes in some cities are really high. Like they've maybe bought a babysitter for the night to come in, and maybe they've traveled a long way. I also remind myself that this is the first time someone in this audience will ever see magic. This is also the last time someone in this audience will ever experience magic. I also remind myself how lucky I am to be here, to be doing this. And I just I remind myself of this, and it becomes, it gets easier the more I've done it to very quickly remind myself of that mantra almost. So before I walk out on that stage, I rid myself of that ego. I want to be present and aware of every person in that room, or to the best extent, make it feel like to them that I am. And I also want it to feel like I'm on holiday. I also have chosen purposefully I take what I do seriously, but I don't take myself seriously. I think a lot of what I do in the world of magic, mentalism, hypnotism, the performer can almost feel like this barrier for the audience between them and the wonder, because the performer wants it to be about them. And as a result, it's that ego thing. And I think when you rid yourself of that, you don't get in the way of that experience. And I think when you can then match or mirror for a lot of that audience, their energy level, when I feel like people are like, oh, I don't want to be here, I make eye contact with them to an extent and then give the same vibe of, I really don't want to be here. And it's like almost in their head, it is that building rapport, right? Of like, in a warped, weird way, it's like they're feeling like, oh, he's like me. He like kind of almost doesn't want to be here. And as a result, there's that, the relationship then built through that shared energy level. And then when I feel like I've matched them, I then lift them to where I want them to be. Because I use a lot of comedy, it really helps then break down any barriers. And because I'm not taking myself seriously, because it's not so heavy on like intense, wow, magic, hand gestures, pyro, I can really connect with people. I mean, Victor Borg said it best: the closest distance between two people is laughter. And when you can laugh with people, you have that shared bond, and then I can move them into where I want to take them next.
I like that. What's interesting is there's a guy by the name of Andrew Tate. I don't know if you've heard of him.
Yeah.
But he comes at the world from this antagonistic, angry place, which fascinatingly, the majority of the world is living in that place. But he's going, I think, maybe just a little bit higher than, like, if you look at what the majority of people are operating off of, he's kind of coming at them with a little bit higher energy level.
Yeah.
But it bumps them up. They feel resonated. They feel like someone's finally validating them. And I think if you can step into a room and you see, like, okay, people are pissed here. Let me, like, go kind of down to where they're at. And then let me kind of go a little bit higher. And by the end of it, everyone's just, has way higher energy. So
yeah. And I mean, I'm obviously aware of the full sort of Andrew Tate movement, right? And I can understand where, and I say this because I think a lot of younger guys get into magic when you're a kid because you don't have the confidence to just go speak to people. You need this thing to connect with other people, right? So I'm looking at this as respectfully as I can. From my own experience, you get into this thing to give you that something, that catalyst, that spark at the beginning. But I think when you then look at the long-term effects of what that is going to do, like imagine walking into like freaking, In-N-Out Burger, like, whoa, give me a burger. I want it. Like, what? To chill out. Just like, I think people are going to burn themselves out if they're resonating at that level constantly. I don't think the long-term impacts are going to be healthy. I think fundamentally there is a sense of falseness to it. And if we're being honest, pretend for most people. It's not who they really are. And I think the longer you wear a mask, the more exhausting it becomes, and you're going to burn yourself out and break much, much faster than just trying to learn. And personally, I'm not into this Andrew Tate approach at all. It's not for me, right? It is very extreme. It's very aggressive. And I'm just more like, dude, go watch Ted Lasso and like have a bubble bath. Like, just, it's going to be okay. Like, what have you got to prove? Like, you're doing great. Like, it's fine. I mean, I think you're maybe in prison. Maybe you're not doing great. But for the most part, like, I understand there's a time and a place to be confident. And there's a big difference between confidence and arrogance. And I also believe there's a time, maybe to be intense, but there's also a time to be vulnerable and gentle and understanding and considerate. And I think finding that balance and understanding that it's not a one-stop shop, it is the ability to adapt and be flexible and aware of situations and people and environments. And that constant ability to shift is what then allows you to be your best self for any circumstance that you want to be your best self in.
Yeah, I love that. I think that the overall mission he's coming at is like, the idea is good, right? I think a lot of people, even on the political spectrum, everyone wants things to be good. Like unless you're a psychopath, you're not like, I want the world to fade into oblivion. But everyone has different ideas on the best vehicle to reach that. And Tate, his thing is, I want men to be better and, support society, X, Y, Z, whatever. Mm-hmm. But it's just interesting to see everyone reaching the same conclusion. We want a better society, but just through different vehicles.
Mm-hmm. I mean, if the intention is good and pure, then great, and maybe some people do need what we would say in the UK, a kick up the ass, right? Maybe some people need a bigger kick up the ass to go do and be the person that they can be that's going to benefit them and society. But yeah, I just feel like that full extreme intense, and that's for my limited I mean, there's a point now where I am very good at putting my phone down, and when I get to a point of seeing stuff that I don't want to put in my brain, I just scroll past it, So I'm obviously aware of kind of who he is, roughly what he's about, but at the same time, there's a point where I'm just like, yeah, it's not for me, so I'm gonna move on. I don't need that in my head.
You know how to control an audience. You studied hypnotism, mentalism, obviously magic, comedy. But do you think that, you just mentioned kind of scrolling on social media, do you think that social media is hypnotizing people, and in the same way you control an audience live is doing that through a screen?
Oh, 100%. I mean, you're in a trance state when you're scrolling, right? I mean, a trance state is focused attention without awareness of really what's happening around about you. It's focused on one thing to the point where nothing else seems to be existing. So, I mean, from that extent, when you're on your phone, you're in a trance. And when you're in a trance, you can be manipulated in all sorts of ways, which we all now know is happening, and yet we're still scrolling. So we don't seem too fussed by it. We're like, we're happy for this to be happening to us.
Do you consume a lot of content, or would you say more of you're like a creator of content?
I would say I wish I was better at creating content, because there's a lot in my head that I wish I could share. I'm just not fully in a place yet where I've worked out the best way to share it, where it would have the impact I hope that I'd try to allow it to have. So I'm still holding on to a lot of stuff that I want to create, and I'm waiting until I'm really ready to release that in a way that I think is going to be most effective and efficient, so people see it. And I think for me, I love like breaking molds and finding new approaches to things, and even like performing on stage. For me, it was always about like, at the end, how can I take the show out the room? And how can we now be on the streets and do another 30 minutes? I'm always like, how can I do stuff that's different? Because I think when it's different, that's when it gets noticed. And I want, if I'm going to do stuff with love, for it to get noticed, right? So I wouldn't also say, though, I consume a lot of content either. I feel like I find what I'm looking for and I try and focus on that. And it's usually videos of cats and kittens looking incredibly cute, which is easy to come by. But I'm really into mental health, mindfulness, and I feel like in the last few years I've gotten better at consuming more of that to just remind myself of a lot of lessons I had when I was in my earlier 20s, and just seeing how much it's advanced as well, and some of the new language that exists to explain things that we've never been able to explain before, like feelings, approaches, ways of thinking. And I think the advancements and improvements in that help us communicate more effectively. So I think for my own lexicon of information that I want to put in there and share, I try and focus purely on that. But I am also guilty of then getting to a point where I'm like, oh, Taylor Swift slipped on stage. I'm going to enjoy that for a second. She's human too. Good. Thanks. I can sleep well tonight.
Have you slipped on stage before?
Have I slipped on stage? Probably. I think, what did I do recently? Not me, but I had someone almost... We've got the video, so I watched back to make sure I didn't play a part in it. I did catch her. She just misjudged where the step was, went over to her ankle, and I, like Tobey Maguire, Spider-Man, caught her, and then just like... it was a good moment. It was, so, you know, also, you know, I'm adding Lifesaver to my bio as of right now. So no, I think I do want to create more content, but I want to wait till I'm ready, and I do it in a way that I think is going to be most beneficial to people that I want to see it.
Is that tying in, would that be tying in what you do right now, or do you think it'd be like pivoting and shifting?
Yeah, I mean, I think constantly, I think I've always been good at evolving. I think when you stay still at something, the world keeps moving, so ultimately you get left behind. So I think my full career has been an evolution. And like some of the best comedians I know, like Eddie Izzard in the UK, his shows, if you buy his box set of DVDs, you basically see you watch one show, then you watch the next one, and you almost see like some material still there, but massively evolved. And in the next DVD, you see some of it still, like most of it's gone, but a few things there, but evolved. And I'm like, oh, some of the best creators, they're not stopping and restarting, they're just evolving constantly. So I think because of Eddie Izzard, that was integrated pretty early on to always be evolving. So the idea of pivoting, the only time I feel like I've really had to pivot or adapt really was like during COVID, when it was taking shows from the stage to down the camera lens and learning how can I be still the mind reader in this environment. That's the only time I've really had to adapt. But I think other than that, everything I've done has been an evolution and building on stuff and trying to make it different. And I definitely know in 10 years where I want to be, but it won't just be stopping all this and starting that. It will definitely be using the next 10 years to make sure that I am moving in that direction now, so that is the trajectory I'm on is going to make sure that I end up in that spot.
It's interesting to see people that there's like people reach levels of success in whatever they're doing, right? And sometimes you see people, they reach it and they push through to another level, whereas other people, they kind of hit it and maybe it fizzles out and they're happy with that. But I think that constant evolution is critical to staying relevant, continuously pushing through to new levels of success.
Yeah, I mean, Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, the Hungarian psychologist, talks in his book about flow about the idea that if we're not being challenged constantly, we're going to end up becoming apathetic and or bored. So it is that full idea of, challenge, this line is skill. If you're being challenged and you have the skills, you're going to experience flow. And then the other boxes look at if you're being challenged but you don't have the skills, that's when you get stressed. When there's no challenge, no skill, you get apathy. When there's no challenge but you have the skills, that's when you get bored. So I do think some level of challenge in life is always important, but that challenge can be many different things. It doesn't just need to be professional. It could be, personal. It can be relationships. It can be adopting, a kitten and training. It can be any challenge as long as you're doing something where you feel like, you are using the skills that you have as an effective human being, then I think, then that is worthwhile. But for me, it has just so far always been professionally. I think that the one thing that has changed though is, and I mentioned it already with the idea of ridding myself as much as I can of ego, is making it less about me taking from the audience the applause and the standing ovations, etc., and it's now looking at ways of giving back. And I think that is, for me, is the next level. Like, I think for a while you go through life going, oh, it's money, I need the car, I need the watch, I need this size house. And then you go, is that it? And there's part of your mind where you could go, oh, there's a new watch, I need that new version. And I think for a while, for me, my guilty pleasure was clothing. I love the brand, like, All Saints is just like my go-to. I'm obsessed because as a student, like their clothing, I mean, it is expensive clothing. Like I love the style, but I remember being a student and going into that shop when I was like 18, 19 and feeling like, oh man, if I could afford one of these t-shirts one day, like I've made it. And I remember looking at my wardrobe one day and just, you know, loads of these t-shirts. And I'm like, shit, why have I not realized I've made it? Like, that was my goal, was to have one of these t-shirts. And now you've got like 100 of these t-shirts. Like, you're there. Like, stop buying t-shirts, right? If you're out of coat hangers. But it's like, there comes a point where you're like, that stuff isn't fulfilling. I mean, we all know, like, there's no doubt about it. Money definitely takes the stress off. And especially like in this country, when I see like healthcare in this country compared to the UK, you know, it's structured so differently here, where there is a level where money definitely obviously alleviates a level of stress. Of course it does. But for me now, like, I am really trying to become the opposite now and be minimalist, and I'm trying to get rid of stuff, and where I can gift stuff away and just keep what I need. I even in writing like new show content, it's like, do you know what? If I'm 36 now, almost probably statistically halfway through life, and it's like, I don't really need much new stuff anymore. Like, I have what I need to now live a very fulfilled, happy life. So it's like, how do I now switch this mindset of now just being more giving? And for me, it's now not about the tangible stuff. It's like, what are the experiences I want to have? What are the things I want to see? Where are the places I want to go? And what are the things I want to do? And that's now where I am very, again, fulfilled, I suppose, in life.
Everyone I talk to who has I think there's two levels of success. There's I call it conscious success and unconscious success. There's people who, like me, who from the age I was 16, I was reading the books, you know, these how to be successful books, and how to win friends and influence people, and how to create wealth, and, you know, philosophical books. You know, I read a book called The Power of Now when I was like 17.
Yeah.
And so I'm on this journey, very intentional about what I'm creating. Mm-hmm. But other people, they're unconsciously successful. They just happen to be operating with success patterns, but they don't necessarily know it, mm-hmm. and they happen to become successful. Mm-hmm. But the common denominator is that whether you're unconsciously successful or consciously successful, the goal is never actually what makes you happy. It's the development through the process, it's the creation, it's the evolving of the human being. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like for you, you're moving into this, or maybe you already have, you just, you know, where it's like the next level of your next, like, I don't know, Colin 3.0 or 4.0, whatever that is for you.
Yeah. No, I definitely think so. I definitely, you know, agree that, success, we you know, you're kind of taught as a kid success is measured in numbers and figures. And and I definitely think now I'm in a place where, you know, I have, you know, the things I always dreamed of and wanted, and I'm super grateful for that. But I think that idea of going back to what you said, of pushing through, and I think if you just keep pushing yourself, like, that is when you burn out. That is when you're going to get to 60, 70 and just go, where did that time go? And it's like, I think now the thing I treasure and value most is time. Mm. And the fact that I'm so grateful and fortunate to have the luxury to have the time now to spend with the people I want, when I want, doing the things I want. And like, that is, for me, that is real success, is it when you have the time. Because that is the one thing you can't buy back, obviously. You get one dose of that, and like, you better spend it wisely. And that is the thing that I now realize that I am so fortunate that I have. That is what makes me feel successful, is I have the time on stage that I want to be doing the stuff that I love, the time with the people doing the things we want to do together, and the time alone where I can be working on myself, learning, improving. And, you know, as you said, some of this stuff has been thankfully unconscious. Some of it has been learned from very similar book journeys that we've both been on. And some of it is just listening now to other people and their stories. And it's so interesting that for a lot of people, they've come through some sort of trauma or difficult upbringing. And I'm very fortunate that my parents, you know, one thing I get asked a lot is, have you ever seen like a magic trick or something that has fooled you and you've had no idea how it's done? Or have you seen something amazing that you had no idea how it was done? And in magic, no. But in real life, like, thinking back to my upbringing of my two parents who left school without any real qualifications and grafting a living and creating their own businesses, all whilst making myself and my sister feel, you know, loved and spoiled. Like, I have no idea how they managed to juggle all these things and make it work and still be, you know, married for like 40 years and happily married. And it's like, how did you guys do that because, like, you know, I'm divorced twice. I am someone who is in my head a lot, overthinking, and, you know, now I've spent a few years in therapy and just to deal with a number of things. It's like, I have all this help and this time. How did you guys do it when, like, you did not stop working? Like, that is the thing that, thinking back, has amazed me most, is like how impressive, you know, and not just my parents, I'm sure many people can relate to that story as well. But because my upbringing was so, like, joyous and happy and loving, I feel very fortunate that I managed to discover a lot of these things as well that I may have overlooked because of, like, how much of a like, here's like, we, you know, growing up, we lived in a small house, and then one of my dad's businesses was building houses, so we lived in like a caravan for like 3 months while he built the house that we then grew up in, which was a beautiful house. But, you know, so I've had a real journey of, like, learning to appreciate working hard, creating things for yourself, because my parents, without realizing it, are two of the best entrepreneurs I've ever seen, you know, building these businesses from essentially what you could consider to be nothing except hard work and energy and passion, and to be doing all of that whilst, again, allowing us to feel loved and encouraged. Because when I told them I wanted to go to university when I was like 15, they were on board. When I told them after university I didn't want to use that degree, I wanted to go travel the world as this performer, they were on board. So I think to just have all of that backing from two people who have made this work has been, like, the most inspiring thing. And I think trying to replicate that in my own way is where it's kind of come from.
Interesting. Now, you obviously, by your look and, you know, what you do, you've been inspired by the idea of Sherlock Holmes. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, you're the real life version of it. And I wonder why.
Yeah.
What is it about that inspired you? Like, what did you see that when you were like a kid, like looking through your child's eyes, was like, that's cool?
Yeah, just the amount of heroin he was taking. No, I'm joking. So as a kid, when I discovered the book in my primary school library, I must have been like 7 or 8. I forget the exact age. But I opened it up to this page where this guy was basically revealing all these facts about someone else. And I was like, how did you know that? And then you turn the page and it tells you how he knew. And I was like, what? This is amazing. And I would basically skim the book to find what I would class as the cool stuff of him deducing things about other people. And for a while I thought, for like easily 6 months to a year, I thought he was a real person, because the way the books are written, it's written from the account of Dr. John Watson about this guy. And I thought, oh, wow, this is a real guy. I want to be him. So I just started, like, trying to do that and failing, but then getting better at some things. And after like 12 months, someone was like, yeah, you know, he didn't actually exist. He's a fictional character. And it was like bubble burst, you know, Santa Claus moment. And it was like devastating. But then the bug had bitten. I was into science, and that's what led to me studying forensic investigation and criminal profiling. As a kid, I was never really into magic, because I got a magic set when I was like 8, and my cousin Karen on Christmas Day learned all the tricks first, did them for the family, and she got the credit. So, you know,
screw magic, I don't need it anymore.
Classic Karen move, right? But yeah, hated Karen more, hated magic more. It was like, yeah. But then I discovered hypnotism, which was a way of, you know, breaking down the human mind to some extent, and controlling that and understanding it, and that fascinated me. And then stand-up comedy, and then all these things linking together, and bringing the Sherlock Holmes skill set to the stage as a performance, it all seemed to click.
As a kid who's like shy, right, and you're the total opposite now, or maybe, you know, maybe you're suppressing it. Sometimes people, I don't know, there's some evolution, something happens to them, they connect with the right group. How could a kid that also is shy, but maybe they know they want to break through it, what are the things that they could do to become less shy? And
yeah, I think number one is work out why you want to do it. I think until you have a reason to do anything in life, the excuses will always outweigh the work you need to put in to do something, right? And definitely, listen, I know that when I do events like this, I'm turning it on so that people want to be in tune, they want to be attentive. I want to project a certain level of energy. Off stage, like when I walk out the Mirage, and this is true, every night after the show, I walk out with the audience, because everyone's facing the same way. No one looks back and sees that I'm there, right? For the most part. Usually it's kids who are like, oh, Mom, that's the guy. And it, like, you know, the hair is a giveaway. But my head is down. Like, I have no intention or desire or need to be the center of attention. I don't crave it. When people are like, oh, we saw the show. Like, I never know what to say. I'm great. I'm grateful. I'm like, thank you for coming, but I'm very much head down. Like, I don't seek it out. I don't need it, right? So I am still to an extent an introvert, and I've done the test, and I am still very introverted, and I'm okay with that. Like, I know that when I'm on stage, I'm there for a reason, and I want to share that reason. But off stage, I'm very happy just being quiet, and unless I'm in my friend group, I'm not gonna be, performer Colin. But I think the breaking out, the being shy, for me, it was going to university, all of a sudden being this young guy in amongst people who were maybe 3 or 4 years older than me on average. 2 or 3 years older on average. But they didn't know how old I was. And I was like, wait, if they don't know that, they also don't know that I'm shy. They also don't know this about me. And you get to almost reinvent yourself a little. And I think when you're younger, you're kind of, unless you move around a lot, you're locked into a certain group of people every day at school who will view you a certain way. You will view them a certain way. They will think they need to act and behave a certain way. You think you need to act and behave a certain way. I mean, it's all bullshit, right? It's all just these narratives that we write in our head, and we kind of stick to that of, they're the football players, so they behave that way. We're into learning, and we love learning, so we need to be a bit geeky. And it's like, who cares? Like, just be who you want to be, or start working out and allowing yourself to discover who you want to be and love yourself for that. Like, the guys I knew at school who were football players and stuff, for the most part, I know that this is not a dig, but most of them, I now know when I go back, they're not in jobs that they're happy with. And, and I wish everyone to be happy in what it is they do, regardless of what it is. But I stuck to what I loved and was passionate about, and that was learning. And, I got the shit ripped out of me for being into wanting to know more about science. And it's like, but then I've followed that idea of stick to what you love. And if you know why you're doing it, maybe you don't know the end result, but I love learning about this stuff. That's why I'm doing it. I'm going to stick with that. And it's led me into this mindset of thinking of always find ways of doing what you love, regardless of like the criticism that you get. If you're passionate about it, you're going to find ways. And if you're driven, you're going to find ways to continue making that happen for yourself. And even with confidence, if you understand why you want to be more confident, and if it is because you want to be a speaker, a politician, a comedian, a rapper, whatever it is, if you know the why, you for now focus on learning the other stuff, which is the writing. If you want to be a rapper, writing lyrics, because I believe that I wrote some of the best stuff when I was younger, right? The creativity when you're younger is insane. I mean, I go through old notebooks, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so glad I wrote this down. I would never have thought of that. So be writing now. And while you have the peak of the creativity, the confidence is maybe here, but you're going to find that balance will start to level out for a while. Maybe it'll shift, maybe not, maybe they'll both grow. But I think while that's lower, focus on what you're good at now. Build up that bank of whatever it is, whether it's getting better, skills as being a speaker, if you want to be a politician again, or even if you're not the most confident, but you want to be a football player, finding ways of still practicing this stuff where you don't need to be the most confident person in the room yet. But I can assure you that when you build up that bank of knowledge, of thinking, of potential for what it is you want to do, when you have that is what then gives you the confidence to go share it. Because when you've been able to create it, the passion will get so pent up inside of you that you're going to want to find a way to get it out. And when you have that safety net of quality content or skill behind you, you know that you're safe. And I think a big part of it is feeling safe, is that when you go to do something, whether it is speaking or playing a sport, whatever it is, physical or mental, when you are giving of yourself, the safer you feel, the more comfortable you are, therefore the more confident you will ultimately be. And for me to begin with, also, I faked it a little bit. I heard someone say, basically fake it until you make it. And I was like, okay, I'll go pretend to be confident. And people believed it. And it was like, oh, wait, this is pretending and doing it are almost the same thing, and that's where it started. And I think now it's just, the safety net was great of me knowing I've got like an hour show that I know is going to work, or hoped would work, but people had told me that I shared it with, they're like, listen, this is all good stuff, go do it, and you get that confidence, that reassurance from other people. So then when I stood up and did it, probably was not anywhere near the best show I ever gave, probably wasn't also the worst show that I've ever done, but certainly when you do it, you realize, oh, it's not actually that bad. And when you get the first one done, you're off. Even every night when I walk on stage, I am never nervous when I walk on stage, but I certainly care about that audience seeing the best show that I can possibly give them. And that level of care does then add a certain level of trepidation of like, okay, better be good because they only see it once. And I know when I get that first laugh, that's it. We're off. That is the spark that breaks everyone down, and it's like dominoes. And I don't mean that arrogantly. I just mean that from a reassurance perspective, that when we get that first laugh together, we're all friends, and everything else is just gonna, snowball from there.
It's cool because the mindset you have with that is, it's like, develop the skill set, move to what you really want to do. Because there's a lot of people out there that are, the fugazis. They're pretending to be this, but they never actually have it. And yeah, you could, the confident thing, whatever. But if you're like, you want to be part of the cool kid crew, like, you're not gonna, like, that's not you. You don't have the skill set. You don't know how to play football or soccer or what, right?
Yeah.
And so, but for you, you developed it, and so that you had the skills, right? You were building skill sets that then, when you're ready to put those to use, you actually could just turn it on, and you don't have to go through the process that, that Alan, who was the captain of the team and now is working as a job he hates.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
and I also think as a kid, the fact that I did learn the mentalism stuff early on. Mentalism, just to be clear, is like the psychological branch of magic where you make it look like you can read minds. And the fact that I could do this for my friends, they would be like freaking out and screaming. And then the people who were in bands would want to come and watch and be like, what are you doing? And I'd show the people who were in the bands. And then the sports teams would come and, so I had this almost golden ticket, like Willy Wonka moment, where I had this golden ticket to these friend groups growing up. And that is, I suppose, where the initiation started for me of being accepted. But I was loving the fact that I was being accepted for who I was. And I didn't need to pretend that I was like into sports or could play a musical instrument. Like, I've tried to play guitar like 10 times in my life. I just can't get it. I own a cool guitar. I'll never play it. My friends come and they play it better than I ever will. And I love that I have it for those moments where they just rock out and I get to appreciate them, right? So it is amazing. But I've just accepted that will never be me, and that's okay. But I had, growing up, this golden ticket where I could access these groups eventually. And I think as long as you are true to who you are and you have this way of connecting that is authentic, I think in this day and age now more than ever, authenticity is like really valued. And I think people being able to, I know it is Kurt Cobain. I think it predates Kurt Cobain, I think. But this is the first person I heard say it. And that is, I would rather be hated for who I am than loved for who I am not. And I just think I heard that early on. I heard him say that. And I'm like, holy shit. Yeah. Like, why would you put effort and energy into, again, wearing these masks that are just going to wear you down? And if anything, we only get so much energy per day. And you get a choice, right? Do you invest that energy into yourself and improving and building yourself up? Or do you spend that energy tearing people down so that you feel like you're ahead? And I think looking back to school, a lot of those people spent their energy, instead of improving themselves, they used that energy to like shit on other people. So they felt like they were higher up. And I think and many people do, you choose to invest that energy in yourself and build yourself up and break through those moments where you are challenged by these things, where you could be made feel lesser for loving, in my case, learning, etc. And because I broke through that, it's then like, you're learning to build this muscle of resilience, right? That just thankfully has sat with me for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm. So with mentalism, there's tactics, right? There's things you're doing that are creating perception.
Yeah.
How much of the tactics are applicable to real world life, where like you're able to learn psychology and actually use it in a way that benefits you outside of the stage?
Yeah, I mean, so for me, the people who are easiest to read on stage are the people who are the most relaxed. And there's like this sweet spot where I don't want someone who is so nervous that they clam up. I don't want someone who's so confident that the audience are just cringing, thinking, why are you dancing and doing jumping jacks on stage, right? So there's definitely a sweet spot. The real skills that I have learned for negotiation, communication, and that real sense of control of people, and I use control in a loving way, I don't mean it in a manipulative way, but that sense of being able to instantly read someone's personality. Everyone's picked at random for the show, so I never know who I'm going to get. And who I get dictates how well what I'm going to do will go, right? And again, going back to that idea of this audience get to see this once, I want it to be perfect for them. So it's my responsibility to be able to control people into that sweet spot where they shine, essentially. My goal, I think, as a performer and as a speaker at any event I'm at, is to get the people who come on stage to look as good as possible. Because when they look good, we all look good and we all have a better time. And I think when people come up, I get a real read of, are they too over the top? Do I need to use certain language to rein them in a little bit so that they don't embarrass themselves? Because I don't want anyone to look bad, right? Or if people are really nervous, do I need to build them up in the few seconds that, because my mic gets killed when people are walking to the stage and the music's playing as they walk to the stage. And it's in that moment that I am basically delivering the lines that I need to. I look at myself as a conductor on that stage. I'm conducting the energy of the audience and the behavior of the people on stage. And it's in that moment I need to decide what, if I do, first of all, do I need to say anything? And if I do, what do I need to say to get this person to a place where they're going to give the best performance? Because I don't treat people like props. Usually they're on stage for like 10 minutes. And in that 10 minutes, I want them to have their moment so that people remember them as much as me. Again, removing the ego, I know that me and them together will create an experience that will amaze everyone, them included. So I want them to be the best person to complement me, Colin, the performer on stage. So me reading that person, just standing up, walking to the stage, that is when I'm using the real skills of reading someone. Then when they're on stage, I'm using the mentalism techniques with a combination of the suggestion techniques and real psychology and my training. It's all now so combined that it would be tough to fully pick it apart. There are definitely certain tricks and techniques that I'm using, right? There's no doubt about it, and I'm honest about that. But it's a combination of those things that really make it, I think, and hope, as amazing as it is.
That's interesting. It's interesting to hear the kind of the behind the scenes working of stuff. Right?
Yeah, and I'm at a point where I have an appreciation for the art and I respect it that I'm never ever going to expose how it's done like one of these mass magician shows. But also I'm proud of the fact that I am able to layer all these things together to create. I mean, people are after the show. Some people are like, "Oh, you must be psychic," and I'm like, "Absolutely not." But I'm amazed that it is a magical enough experience that it looks like it could be.
What in the event of like hecklers and or maybe an audience that's off, how do you regain control?
I shouldn't say this because I don't want to encourage it, but I love when heckles happen. I just love having to be present, and I love. I grew up for 10 years in performing in Glasgow comedy clubs, in cabaret environments where I'm on with 10 phenomenal dancers who are females who are going to basically slowly undress for this audience, who are there to drink cocktails, eat amazing food, watch them and not have to think. Then I come out with far too much hairspray and try to engage them for 20 minutes. And it's like, what are you doing? Like, what is this? So I really went through, the ringer, as it were, learning how to perform. And I love that the place I learned was that hard, because now that I have done that and learned how to cope and succeed in that environment, anything else is, put me on stage on Broadway now with a spotlight. It's like, I'm flying. This is easy now compared to those environments. I'm so grateful of the hard experiences. And people would heckle there. So my Rolodex for heckles is pretty extreme. I will also say at the Mirage, I'm encouraged to stay to Disney level humor. So it needs to be family friendly. No one needs to be offended in that show. So I need to basically filter a lot before I respond. But heckling and stuff, I love it because it's like, there's two ways that people heckle. Either someone is drunk, obnoxious, or just wants to be rude for the sake of it. And that's one branch of heckling. The other branch, and that's easy to deal with because the audience turn on that person very quickly. The other branch are people who just shout because they think they want to be involved. They want to add to the experience. And I don't want to encourage it because I don't want to throw off, the show is set to a certain time limit, right? So I don't want to add more time to the show. But the people that want to shout to add to the experience, it's like, that's a beautiful thing. That is like people who have the confidence to want to engage, and they're like, oh, pick me, I want to do this. They want to be seen and acknowledged, and I do think it's quite wonderful, and I have ways of dealing with that as well, and still including those people. So I love it because then the audience know that show that they saw was just for them. That's never happening that way again. And, as much as I love and appreciate and admire Shin Lim's magic, which is beautiful artistic pieces to music, unless he consciously chooses to change aspects of that before the show, what you are watching is a beautifully choreographed dance that is stunningly magical. But for him, it will always be the same every night. And in my head, I'm like, I couldn't live like that. Like, I need stuff to change, And again, I respect every aspect of what he does. But for me, I love that I never know quite what's going to happen. And it makes me be present. And because I know the tricks so well, I'm not thinking about the tricks or the methods. I'm thinking about the people and the room and who is shouting stuff or who is saying, I'm watching all of it. And I love it. I really love the heckling. And then the other part you said, though, was the...
controlling the audience. They
go
out.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've never walked on stage and felt an audience are like angry or confrontational off the bat. Not unless something has happened before an event that has inspired that group mentality. Because usually if people buy a ticket to come and see the show, they want to see the show, right? They're not buying a ticket and being like, right, impress me, magic boy. It's like they're here, they're here to enjoy it in some way. So yeah, unless there's been like traffic jams before the show, like, New Year's Eve when people try and get to anywhere on the strip, it's a mess, right? So people coming in late, then maybe. But I think I'm very good at acknowledging and addressing elephants in the room and just knowing how to use all of that and, use that. If I could read minds, for real, I would know exactly that everyone's thinking the same thing. So usually it's like, I look like the evil twin of Neil Patrick Harris. So I say it first because people are thinking it. So stuff like that, if I say it first, that's where good comedy comes from, is that awareness and that attention to detail. So by addressing all those things, it makes me look more like a mind reader and also brings everyone together with laughter and comedy. So far, thankfully, I've never had any experience where that has happened, but I do think the confidence in being able to address that, and if I ever walked out and I felt like this audience were hostile, I would start and talk about that and like the fact that this feels, I feel like I'm, if I was in Vegas, I'd be like, wow, it feels like I'm back home with my parents. Like, I would say something that just humanizes it, makes me seem like a real person, addresses it, and then brings it back to reality. And I would find a way for us to laugh about it and take the sting out of the situation. I think that is my go-to defense mechanism.
I just had a little laugh because I was at a comedy club a few weeks ago and I was in the second row, and the people in the first row, we really tried to be like, hey, like, you want to trade, please? And anyways, it's a couple, like a man and a wife, and every comedian comes out one after the other. These people don't laugh once, and by like, the whole audience is like, why? Like, they're getting engaged with the comedian. And then by like the third comedian, the guy's like, what's wrong with you guys, right? And then the fourth guy says, and everyone died laughing, goes, you guys laughing on the inside?
Yeah.
There's nothing out here. Like, why do you sit there? And anyways, it's cool to be able to address that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, why not, right? I want to learn. Like, here's the thing. If that ever happened, I'd only ever want it to happen once. And I love hindsight. I love driving home after the shows, every show that I do, thinking, what could I have said in that moment that would have been more effective, funny, or more amazing? I love replaying stuff. I film every show that I do and get notes, either take notes myself or from the team of people that I trust to give really good, constructive feedback. It's like, I want to learn. So if that did happen, I would be coming at it from every angle in that moment to then find out what worked, so that should it happen again, I'd already have the unlock. It's, I would look at it as a learning rather than just a really shitty experience.
So your career, I would say escalated pretty quickly. You've been working on this. It's like Michael Jordan, the guy's working in the gym day in and day out for 2 decades before, he gets recognized for it. And I don't know what you're behind the scenes, but you did have, you're working on some stuff. You're doing stuff with The Illusionist, then you do AGT, then AGT Champions. You did Britain's Got Talent. Yeah. What was that feeling like when you're bumping up like level after level after level? And arguably, I don't know if there's like, are there levels beyond what you're doing now? I think, show on the strip is kind of...
Yeah. I mean, I think it goes back to this idea of when I was younger, building up this bank of like ideas. And I think being as different as possible will help you ultimately stand out, right? So like having all of that ready to go was important. And then in 2012-ish, I went on Britain's Got Talent for the first time and basically didn't bomb. I got 4 yeses and, but I didn't get through to the live shows. And in my head, just became very disillusioned with like TV. And I was like, okay, well, I don't want to do TV. And then I did the Edinburgh Festival for the first time. And I was like, oh, this is actually what I love, is doing this stuff live. But then NBC were in Edinburgh for the TV festival, saw me, and then went, we love this. We want to bring you to America to do a show here. I was like, right, okay. And then I remember there was like a 4-6 month period where NBC were flying me back and forward, filming sizzle reels, taking me to New York around all the major TV networks, LA to the TV networks. And it was like, wait, this is... And then they announced it on NBC Peacock, announced it. They'd signed me, we're working on a series. And I'm like, what is happening? This is it. And then overnight, it went away. Like they got a new top person and they were like, actually, we don't want to do any more mentalism or magic for now. So never mind. And it was just all of a sudden, what felt like it was a guaranteed, we're signing contracts. I'm for the first time ever getting lawyers. And I'm like, this is real. This is, wow. And it went away. And then I hated TV even more. And I was like, yeah, that is such a head fuck to be that close. But again, the lessons I learned were like, okay, then even getting that close, until it airs, it's not real, is what I learned. Until it actually is on someone's TV screen, it's not real. So that was the big learning there. But then the Edinburgh Festival the Edinburgh Festival led to me being noticed by the Illusionists. And they were doing a show in the West End, and I had emailed them and said, hey, I do mentalism, I'd love to be part of the show. And they went, we tried mentalism, it's not for us, we need more visual stuff. It's too cerebral, it's too much talking, And I said, okay, but here are some clips of like what I would have done. And then like 2 days later, the email back and went, wait, do you have any more clips of this act? And because I film everything, I had like 20 YouTube links ready to go. And basically they saw consistently in that Wild Cabaret club that I would test stuff in, or work stuff in Glasgow, the same act working over and over again. And they went, we're going to fly you to London. We want to meet with you.
So it was the same thing, just multiple tapes of the same thing.
Multiple tapes of the same act.
They wanted to see that.
I think they wanted to see that what I sent them wasn't just a lucky fluke of the people I brought up, is what I think. They wanted to see it done over and over just to make sure that like, oh yeah, no, he's consistently getting people really laughing, really applauding, standing over it. Like, this is weird. Legit. Yeah, he can do it. So they flew me down and then they went, we want you to host, based on what we've seen, we want you to host the West End show and do those acts. And I'm in the meeting just being confident, like, sounds great, yeah, I'd love, yeah. And in my head, I'm like, fuck, how do you host a show? And then they said, also in the show will be, and they listed some phenomenal magicians like Kevin James. These are guys that you grew up really respect. Like every magician, like your David Blaine's, your David Copperfields know these names and respect these names. But Kevin James, David Williamson, and I'm like, these guys are infinitely better than me. Like, how am I gonna? I'm just calm, and I'm like, and I left and I thought about it. I'm like, no, do you know what? They've seen what you do. They believe in you. So if they believe in you and they don't even know you, time to start really believing in yourself here and upping your game. And I, for like 3 months, wrote different scripts of things and just really worked on it and just became really comfortable again with the safe content, knowing because I'd run it for friends that they're like, yeah, this is funny, this is solid, this is impactful. Hosted the West End show, and then that led to coming to not America first, to Canada, and that's where America's Got Talent came to the show. Everyone that's on the show for America's Got Talent, they get scouted or you audition in some way. It's all an audition. And they were there to see another act, but came up to me at the end and said, hey, we want you to do AGT. And I went, very kind, but I've no interest in doing TV, but thank you so much. And then they phoned Simon Painter, who owns The Illusionist. And he phoned me and went, they want you to do AGT. And I went, very kind, but no thanks. He went, no. We think this would be good. Basically, it was your boss saying, you're working Sunday. And you're like, I've got plans. And they're like, no, you're working on Sunday.
Wow.
Yeah. But I was like, oh, shit. And I'd heard horror stories from like Kevin James who did it. And, at the time didn't make magic look as good as it could have been. And I was dreading it. And then did the first one. And I actually realized they really want to get behind you. And then I was like, holy shit, actually, this is a really good experience. And I think over the years, they've learned if they make magic look bad, magicians are not going to want to come on the show. So they learn to pivot their perspective on how to showcase magic. And I just came in at the right time, and it just really, took off. And they've had me back. I'm the only person who never made it to the live finals. They've had back as a guest because they, Jason Raff, very thankfully, one of the producers, seems to like the way that I write for that show. And I really think not about what do I want to present, but what do that audience want to see. And I work out the demographic, and I write to that demographic for that show, and that's the way I approach it. But yeah, that has definitely led to them being recognized and noticed here for different projects, and yeah, it definitely blew up after that.
You make mentalism, which is, you've described it a little bit here, but boring, slow. You make it so freaking big, right? And like, you look at even just the AGT stuff for people who haven't been able to see your show, like there's props, there's so much stuff. Yeah. First of all, who is that, like, stuff you bring? Like, are you lugging this out to the place to do it?
No, thancfully we send them photos of like what I imagine it looking like, and they're
and they pay for it, and they build it, and
yeah, they basically do all that. Yeah. So I mean, that's what I mean. They really get behind you when you have as long as you have a vision. For anyone who's thinking about doing this show, AGT, who is a magician or any type of performer, all I would say is make sure you go on there ready for it with a vision that is road tested and that you're comfortable with. Because the days that you're there, you will not get any sleep. You'll be doing media, you'll be doing B-roll, you'll be doing social media content, you will not sleep. So when you get there, there is no time to think. So make sure when you go there, you don't need to. Make sure it's already in place and done. And also make sure that afterwards you have something to sell. Don't go on that show thinking this show is going to make me be it. This is not, that's not the way to look at it. Because if you go on there thinking that show is going to make you, you're wrong. It will be your springboard to the next thing, as long as you know what that next thing looks like for yourself. But if you go in there thinking they're going to do that for you, then I'm sorry, that's not what that show is. That show is designed to, make those four judges and Terry Crews look amazing, which it does. And the acts, they will look great for the time they're on that show. But after that show, don't for a second think people are going to come to you. They might, but for 99% of people, it's not that case. You need to have something ready to take to people and use the AGT footage and experience to show people how well you do that thing. And I think that, thankfully, because I had all that in place, that is what has allowed it to be sustainable.
How do people get on the show? Because you got scouted. Do you know, is there a way, like, if someone wants to be on the show? Because you kind of made it sound like they get to choose, but I think you got to be really talented, or there's got to be something about you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one or two. I mean, again, wait till you're ready, because you get one shot at it. You get one shot. Don't blow that one chance to raise your profile too early, because that's what this is. It's a great chance, a great opportunity to raise your profile. So wait until you're ready. But I think in this day and age, with things like social media, where you can then put out clips of you doing the thing that you do and love doing, and have that so that they can see that and see like 10 performances of you doing that thing or variations of that thing. Or if you can send them clips of you doing that act on a stage somewhere like multiple times, they will take, if you just email them and say, hey, I like magic, and I've got a couple of tricks, can I come on? Like they need to see that you're capable, because they want to get behind people who can prove that they're ready to be gotten behind, and to give them that boost. But I think just being able to film all this stuff, because that's what led to Illusionist, for me, so that's where Illusionist saw me. They came to the Illusionist show where they saw me do it live. Had I not had the Illusionist opportunity, and had I wanted to do it, I would have been sending them the clips that I'd sent Illusionist. So that's how I would have done it. They came in to see the Illusionist show because they were scouting there, which is one way they find magic acts for the show. Not the only way, but one of the ways. But yeah, certainly putting yourself out there, and just, it's going to do two things. One, it gets you more experience and footage, but also it's more chances for them to find you and see you. But I promise though, people, when you are ready to do the show, when you are good enough to succeed beyond the show, that is when I feel like a show like that, you're almost ready for it. And I'm only saying that because I wouldn't want people to do it too soon and either look bad, for one, for sure, or two, to not be then ready to sustain it following it.
Interesting. So with you, you were able to carry that in. You connected that with Shin. You guys did, I don't know if this was like right after, but you guys did 3 shows at the Mirage.
Yeah.
Right. Sold them out in less than a day.
Yeah.
And was that the next step? Like, was that?
So Shin and I had performed together. We did like a magic convention years ago in London together. That's where we first met, where Shin was basically this guy who was doing all this really alternative magic stuff that people were looking at going like, yeah, it looks amazing, but you're never going to do that in the real world. Like, that'll never work in real life. Like, talk about breaking rules, right? I mean, true pioneer. And we then toured New Zealand together in 2017. So I had just done AGT. He was thinking about doing it, and he was like, so did you enjoy it? Should I do it? And I was like, dude, your stuff's amazing. Yeah, like if you want to raise your profile, 100. Speaking of someone being ready, right? He is the perfect example of someone who had the stuff, had the vision, and knew what he wanted to do after it. So like, perfect example of someone who should have done that show at that time, clearly, by winning it twice. I mean, he's won the show twice, and I've won it 0 times. So between us, we've won it, twice. Yeah, 1 each. But he was ready, and
is that one you use in the show? That was good.
It's not. It's one that I've written and I've thought about using, but there's no time. So, so I thought I'm going to use it here. Yeah, he. Remind me of the question. Let me go back.
How many times did you win AGT?
Yeah, loads.
So, I don't know.
Yeah. What was it was about 20 seconds of just trying to play back to...
So I guess...
Oh, trajectory. You were asking.
He was on the show. So Shin did it. He won it.
And getting the show here. So we toured New Zealand together.
One time for him, one time for you.
That's how it works. And then he won. Then we did Broadway together in 2018. And he took me aside one night and said, hey, there's like some people in who were watching the show, and like he basically said in confidence at the time, I'm about to do my own residency in Vegas. Would you like to come and like be part of that?
And you're imagining like, oh, he wants me to open the curtains, but in the back.
And I'm like, yeah. But I didn't. I was like, well, that I'm good at the talking stuff. Did you want me to come and like write some stuff for you, or I don't know what you mean, but I'm like, say yes to everything, and I work it out later. And he was basically like, yeah, I want to do the show where basically it's a story of my. At the time, it wasn't the story of my life, but he wanted to tell his story, his journey. And he was like, I want you to come in and like narrate and like do bits. So I thought, best case scenario, I was like, oh, you want me to come and do 20 minutes at the start? Yeah, great. I'm honored. He was like, no. I want you to do yes at the start, but then me, then you, then me. And like, I was like, holy shit, this is like amazing. The reason it was amazing is that it was to begin with, it was only 3 nights and they sold out, as you said. Then Mirage said 3 months, and then they were basically filling up. Like, he was, I mean, his profile's still high, but at the time, you've just won AGT twice. Everyone knows who you are, So it just kept selling out, and they just kept adding more and more shows. And he was like, can you commit to being a part of this journey? And again, honored, but I love the fact that it wasn't touring anymore. I will say, touring, doing, I imagine, anything that you love is a love-hate relationship. You love the 30 minutes you get on stage, but then you've got 23 hours, 30 minutes of a day that you need to fill up with being away from friends, family, life, and that can tear you apart, So the fact I got to be in one place for any length of time was like, this is amazing. Yes, I love that. And here we are, that was 2019. Here we are currently 2023, almost into 2024, and it's still, packed every single night, if not sold out. Amazing.
Dude, you're so humble too. I love how every time it comes to talk about how great you are, you deflect.
Just no ego. Like I listen, I hope I'm good at what I do. And I think the fact that someone who I respect as much as Shin Lim has asked me to be basically standing side by side with him on that stage, that is the biggest honor in what I do. Someone who has done it all, won it all, turns to you and says, hey man, would you come and, be the narrator of this show? It's like, holy shit, like that is the reward. That is that fills you with the feeling of success. To be seen by someone as talented, as successful as Shin Lim, for him to go, please come and, you know, I'd love you to be part of the show. Like, what an honor, you know? But yeah, very bad at taking compliments. That's why I don't speak to people after the show. They're like, oh, we loved it. I'm like, oh, thank you.
Like, oh no, I just dressed up as the guy. The other guy back there.
Yeah, just like similar hair. We get that all the time. Yeah, I don't know why that is. Like, I don't know. I think it goes back to that introvert, shy kid, right? Who just doesn't know what to do with that information because, you know, my parents have always been supportive and loving and yeah, but I just think, I don't know, some part of me just can't handle it.
So, dude, what's next for you? You know, hopefully there's years and years and years that the show continues to be fabulous.
Yeah.
But you as a person, like, what are you moving towards?
Yeah, I think if you'd asked me 10 years ago, what do you want to do in your career? I mean, it would have been things like be in the Illusionist show or be front and center of the poster of the Illusionist lineup. Did that. It was then do the Royal Variety performance. And I did that. Not only did I do that, it was for, you know, Prince William, Kate Middleton, London Palladium. The act on before me, it's a little known band. I don't know if they're big here. They're called The Killers. Playing Mr. Brightside and then introducing me. And it's like, what is happening? And my parents were in the audience. It was like the dream gig, right? So I did that. And then it's like, you know, I've managed to do all these things. And I'm glad I did them, and they were very rewarding and fulfilling, but it didn't feel like, oh, I'm done now. It felt like, I thought that it would feel maybe more complete than it did, but I'll always remember just going, like, doing, like, Royal Variety that night, and as soon as the curtains went down, everyone just left, and I'm just like, wow, it's amazing how fast these moments are fleeting. So you cannot rely on these moments forever to be the thing that you chase. I think the thing that you chase needs to learn to come from within you. That needs to be the thing that you are finding fulfillment from, because if it's always external things, you're never going to be fully happy. It's always going to be rewarding and fulfilling in the moment, and then it will just go. And it's like if you're constantly trying to chase that stuff, you're chasing the horizon, right? You're just never going to get there. And I think when you learn to stop, breathe, look back on what you've done and appreciate it and really value it, which for a few years because of lockdown, I had the first time ever to stop and really reflect on all of my life. And I think now it really does come from me and loving this moment and being present, and the fact that we get to do stuff like this and have these chats. I mean, this is amazing that we can talk about stuff like this and share it with the world. But I think for me, whatever is next is going to be more that trajectory of giving back and finding ways of still doing what I love because I'm good at it, and I love the creative side. Like, the one thing my girlfriend, I'm like, you know, we have these chats where it's like, right, how can I love you better? How can I be better at loving you? Or what would make you feel more acknowledged? And, you know, the one thing that she says is both something that's really impressive, but also the curse of being with me is that my brain doesn't switch off from writing and creating, because I love that side of it. It just is always trying to improve and be better. So I am also now trying to be better at being present and switching off and learning that you need that time. Because if you go to the gym every day for 10 hours a day, if your muscles never get time to rebuild, then it's pointless. You know, you need time to relax as well. So I am now trying to learn to be more present, put the phone away and really, you know, do those things together and love that. So that is, you know, a big thing as well. But I think whatever I do next, you know, I'm loving where I'm at now, and long may that continue. And whatever the next big thing is, like the show I've just done at this year's Edinburgh Festival, it was very much me more being vulnerable, talking about mindfulness and sharing that, because I think I've got this amazing platform and I now have the skills to communicate effectively in a way that is amazing to people because of the mentalism. So whatever message I want to deliver that I think will benefit everyone, it will stick and resonate more powerfully because of all the things that I can combine to share those real tangible skills with an audience.
Is it a message, or is it changing and evolving? Is there a message?
I think it will always evolve. I think though it's more of a vibe and a feeling and an awareness and you know, sharing what I have gone through things we haven't really covered here, but the difficult lessons in my life, things that I've gone through that have led me to here, of overcoming that and that skill set, even for some people, an awareness that skill set exists. Because some people, the idea of like resilience or being vulnerable, like the power of crying, being able to say I love you to another person, a family member, a human being, this skill set, I think some people, going back to like the Andrew Tates of the world, just don't have that, don't realize the power in that and the freedom that having these skills will enable you to have and acknowledge and access and then go on and share with other people. It's like if there is a meaning to life, it's to leave the world and the people in it in a better state than we found it. And I think we could all always be better at learning about that for ourselves and for other people.
Love it. Dude, I ever since I was a kid, fascinated with magic.
Right.
Loved it. I also had a kit when I was a kid. Mine was the ropes and the thumb thing.
Absolutely.
And so now, from time to time, I buy, shit on Amazon or tricks I see and stuff like that. And it's always fun. So yeah, I bought one. I was gonna try to perform it for you. This is one I've had for some time. I'm not going to.
Oh, please do, because so often at these things at the end people go, "Can you do a trick?"
Dude,
and I'm like,
no, exactly. So I was like,
I'm gonna do one. This is amazing.
So I have friends that we have a lot of common magic friends. And I get dance monkey dance, like it's always the thing. So I figured we'd reverse it. So you're looking at this, you instantly know what it is, but maybe the audience doesn't.
This is for audiences that haven't seen what's about to happen. This was performed for me by an uncle. And when he did it, my reality was shattered. So I don't want to put any a bar.
So we're gonna you know what's gonna happen, but everyone's gonna close their eyes because I didn't set it up. But okay, now so what we have here is we got a stack of 4 quarters.
Yep.
Let's go ahead and reset here.
No,
all right, guys, we got 4 quarters.
Yep.
Pause.
Yeah. Let's put it on the table.
But then it makes noise when you bang it.
Oh, it doesn't.
All right, cool.
I mean, the bang.
So we got 4.
Yeah.
These guys know the tricks too. I showed it to them. Yeah. All right. So what we have here is we have an empty container, right? We got 4 quarters, and this is a stack of 4 quarters. So what I'm gonna do here with some power of magic and editing is I'm gonna go ahead and cover up the quarters. Now, what we do here is we cover up the quarters, and if you take a look, right, the quarters are under. So what we're going to do here is we're going to, after I finish performing it, you're going to give me the performance of how this trick should be done. All right, so I'm going to...
You're just a man aggressively banging metal on a desk. That's what this is.
So we got the empty container. I'm going to cover up these quarters. Now, what's cool is with the power of the mind, right? My company is called Mindful Agency. We believe in mindfulness and helping people elevate through that. I believe that really anything is possible. So I'll take this, and what we'll actually do is we'll take these quarters here. Now, I'm going to go ahead and we'll go ahead and put these quarters, the stack on top here. Now, what I'm going to do is, again, they're not under here. I'm going to push them through using the power of my mind from the top stack down through this metal part into the bottom part down here. So you're going to count with me. Ready? 1, 2, 3. And now everyone always says, okay, Dylan, well, they're just sitting in the top, right? You just did something there. Well, no, that's not how it works. As you can see, the container's empty, and that's how it works. So that's my magic trick. I'm not going to ask the monkey to perform one, but now I think actually it'd be cool if you tried to do the same trick.
Yeah.
Can you do it?
So the way I learned it as a kid, may I? Thank you for bringing the props to the table. I've not seen this in years, but this is, wow. I'm getting real nostalgia here just looking at this stuff. This is incredible. So yeah, the way it was performed for me was slightly differently, but these are just like 2 little like metal cups that you get in any little metal cup shop. I don't know. Could never justify what they were, right? But still, a beautiful prop. But the idea was that, look, I'm gonna sit the stack of quarters over here. So this is clearly empty. We're gonna start with them here, and it's more about traveling impossibly in the way that I learned it. So there's nothing here, but if we just click, they vanish from here, and now they reappear over here. Magic.
Dude, that's awesome. Love it.
Thanks. I'm so amazed that you have this. This is incredible. Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
Well, cool, dude. So anything else you want to share with the audience? How can people connect with you?
Yeah, I mean, I use social media very, very poorly at the moment, is the truth. But I am on Instagram at Colin Cloud. My goal over the next year is I have started writing my first ever book for the general public as well, tying together all this stuff. People after the show at Edinburgh, my show at Edinburgh Festival this year was my first show where I really felt like I was really giving of myself, like we've talked about here, and really opened up with the audience and shared with them a journey that I have gone on over the last few years and the learnings of that and the outcome of that. So that is something that really impacted people, and they've asked that I start speaking more about mental health on and use my platforms for that and sharing my insights, because people thankfully found it, to be very rewarding in the way that I would have hoped. So I will be using it a lot more to chat about, my own approach to a lot of this stuff. As I write the book and sharing that journey as well. And if anyone wants to ask any questions, Instagram is probably the best way. So Twitter, Facebook, all the hot ones, right? I'm on all of those, but
we'll throw the links in the notes. And dude, one last thing. So I've got this book here now. One thing that's cool is I believe in, I think that in life, we kind of leave seeds throughout where we go in life. And whether we're shopping at the store and we smile at someone and that lady now is happy and it goes throughout her life. So I created this book as a way to kind of pass on that through my guests through the show. So what's cool is the previous guests, while they didn't know who you'd be or what we talk about, wrote a question they wanted you to answer.
Okay.
So you'll answer the question and then you'll leave one for the next guest.
Perfect.
So
it's a beautiful book as well.
Thanks, man. All right. So what could you do differently to achieve your number one goal quicker?
What could I do differently to achieve my number one goal quicker? It's interesting, right? Because my number one goal has always been kind of changing and evolving. But what could I have done quicker? I think the thing that has benefited my personal and professional journey most, it comes down to the people that I surround myself with. And the people that I mentioned who, even for like the shows, when I write a show and send them the script, they'll read it and give me amazing feedback. That is like the most beneficial thing on the planet. But then even for like learning personal growth, there are people that I can, usually the same people. My girlfriend's a psychologist. My best friend is like so into meditation and mindset thinking. It's amazing, like the stuff he knows. So those people are actually the same, it's the same group. And I love that I have those people to help me evolve. But I will also say that in life, there have been people who have been bad for me. And I'm not saying that they're bad people, but I just mean that our relationship together was bad. And as a result, that can be like these roadblocks that are in your life. And I think the one skill I wish I had was to have been able to get rid of certain people all throughout my life much, much sooner. And then cultivate the group that is actually good for me. So I think the one thing that would have helped would have been, to put it bluntly, getting rid of shitty people much, much faster.
Love it. Dude, thanks for coming on, man. This has been good.
Thank you so much for having me.